Great. Well, welcome to the Columbus GreenSpot Conversations. It's a webinar series created by the GreenSpot Advisory Board, and we delve into different aspects of sustainability in our community. And we are planning on more than 20 entries in this series, and you can get the latest by following us on social media, on Facebook and Twitter, and by becoming a GreenSpot member by going to columbusgreenspot.org. You could join that way, and our members get advance notice of the webinars several days before we invite the general public in. So make sure you sign up to be a member. So today I'd like to introduce today's topic, a conversation with GreenSpot members, Simply Living. They are a community organization that celebrates and connects people to learning opportunities to promote community sustainability, environmental awareness, and our local economy through education outreach and partnerships within our community. So in short, they offer community education for sustainably living. And our guest today is Chuck Lynd. Now, a little bit about Chuck. He is an educator, an environmentalist, and an advocate for locally owned businesses, and co-leader of the Ohio Coalition for Public Banking. He is a founding board member of Simply Living, and he serves on the board of the Ohio Sustainable Business Council and the advisory committee for Elevate Northland. Chuck is the outreach volunteer for Simply Living. His email is chuck@simplyliving.org, and we'll put that in the chat. And Chuck, you do a little bit of everything, it sounds like. Well, welcome.
We do a lot of different activities, and one of them is being a big fan of GreenSpot and the program, and we are happy to be a partner with you, and thank you very much for hosting us today.
Anytime. I'm glad you're able to do it. And let's just start from the beginning. Let's start way back at the beginning. So when did Simply Living start as an organization?
And you can advance that first slide if you want. We started in 1992. And that was 29 years ago. And we actually had a year before that of planning it. And here's our picture of our founding mother, Marilyn Welker. Marilyn had attended the 1990, the 20th year anniversary of Earth Day. And at Whetstone Park, there were like 20,000 people, and everybody was just blown away that there were so many people there. And Marilyn had the idea that, wow, people really want to pay attention and change. And she had this idea that if we formed a group that would focus on lifestyle changes, paying more attention to the environment, that would be a good thing. And we just planned it, and it started with forming a board, and started in 1992. And we've been active. We're small, we're not large, but we're networked with all the other environmental groups. So you want to move the screen there, David. And we're inspired as part of a general movement that many people don't realize, that Simply Living, we've been around locally for so long, but we're part of a larger voluntary simplicity movement. And Dwayne Elgin, go to the next slide, wrote a book called Voluntary Simplicity, probably 30 some years ago. And it's been revised and updated periodically. But you notice the subtitle is Toward a Way of Life That is Outwardly Simple, Inwardly Rich. And that's kind of the motto of Simply Living in terms of how we see ourself evolving. You'll see the next slide here. So Dwayne Elgin is still around, and he recently wrote a little piece, and I copied out his comments on where the movement is today, meaning the general movement toward intentionally living more simply. And he says the public conversation about simplicity is shifting from complacency to urgency. And people realize that, wait a minute, this consumer economy is a problem, and maybe we better be paying attention to sustainability aspects of it. And it says, number two, as people's sense of urgency has grown, interest in sustainable ways of living has soared, and simplicity has moved from the margins of society to the mainstream. Well, maybe not as mainstream as we would like, but number three, simplicity has moved from being regarded as a path of regress to being seen as a path to a new kind of progress and social vitality. And over the decades, simplicity is increasingly being defined by what it is for, connecting with and caring for life and the earth, instead of what it is against, destructive consumerism. So yes, we like to think of ourselves as for the solutions. And there are many to address these issues in the environment. So next slide. And one of the, I picked this quote because Dwayne Eldon says, compassion will no longer be seen as a spiritual luxury for a contemplative few. Rather, it will be viewed as a social necessity for the entire human family. And that relates a lot to the fact that we've had this kind of backlash against, the whole issue of Black Lives Matter, people of color, and the whole human family. We have to have compassion and be part of the Earth community. So I think that's a really important thought for today. And next slide, please. So why do people join Simply Living? And we have three main themes that we talk about. And these slides, I don't go into details, but simplify. That's kind of the obvious thing. You say Simply Living, and people think, well, yeah, we're kind of overloaded. We're doing too many things. We're losing our minds. We need to have less stress and more living. I like to think of Simply Living as the living part underlined, because living is really what the quality of life is what's so important to, I think, all of us. Certainly everybody living, watching here and listening today. Next slide, please. So a lot of us choose to join Simply Living because this is our second theme, greening the earth. So we got pictures there of people that are, doing Earth Day activities, cleanup activities, sometimes protesting. A lot of the policy issues that we like to see, like the city's climate action plan, is a good example of something. We favor, solar energy and renewable energy, local food, all local economy things, because they strengthen the community. And greening the earth is a motivation that many of us have to get engaged in these activities and policy changes. And next. So our third theme for people who join Simply Living, we have lots of people who are heart-centered, spiritually practiced yoga people, Reiki, alternative health people, deepening relationships with people on the planet. And we call that theme our healing to wholeness. So there's a lot of people who want to simplify. Maybe they're not as active, but they do want to work on themselves and work on their healing relationships with nature and really connecting with the cosmos, with the consciousness that we're moving into an earth-centered future. Next slide. I think we'll just go through these real quickly. We do have a book club of discussions, and these are just some examples of books that we've done in the past, and I'm sure we'll do many more. Next slide, please. And we've done lots of projects and partnerships. Many people remember the Clintonville Community Market Food Co-op. We helped start that with the Simply Living was an initial partner, and we did that for 18 years. A lot of people don't know that we started WGRN and actually WCRS, which was the original CRS community radio station. It's a low power station, and you can. Green Renaissance Network is what the WGRN stands for. Check it out, the Green Renaissance Network. We got the original license from the FCC. It took us 6 years to do that. The board finally turned it over to the Free Press and the various groups, Neighborhood Network, and groups that actually run the stations now. We don't do that now. We turn that over to them. We had to support our local economy project for 7 years, and we're now kind of moved into a public banking initiative. I'll say a little bit about that later. We've worked closely with Local Matters. When they first formed, they were in our office. They were office mates. Some of you know Noreen Warnock and the founders of Simply Living, who first started with community gardens. So we've been involved with them in local food transformation for years. Michael Jones, and now Michelle Moskowitz-Brown is the leader of that group. We've partnered in local economic development with Economic and Community Development Institute. They have an Invest Local Ohio project, and we encourage people to invest local, and that's one way to do it. Okay, next slide. And we're affiliated with some other groups, the national groups. There's the Northwest Earth Institute, which I need to update this and say that they now do the Eco Challenge, and their primary website is now ecochallenge.org, O-R-G, and they have projects to encourage people to do that. They have a whole set of courses which we continue to offer, and they're now available online, and we'll be announcing more of those later in the year. The Transition Town Movement is an international group. There are lots of sustainable communities, GreenSpot being a great example right from the city of Columbus, but there are sustainable groups in Westerville and Worthington and Gahanna and Grandview and, Delaware. And so Simply Living is actually an official transition hub as part of the United States Transition Town Movement. And we provide assistance and help with people that want to start green projects, just like GreenSpot. That's why we'll be doing more partnering with GreenSpot. The Care and Share Time Bank, we're affiliated with them. They do sharing of time with hours, and people who volunteer, for example, with Simply Living can become part of the time bank and exchange learning lessons for learning foreign language like Spanish. There's lots of activities from getting a ride share to pet sitting and all kinds of help that you can get, massages and services through the Care and Share Time Bank. So that we're one of 15 groups, by the way, that are part of the Time Bank. Okay, next slide. And we do a lot of communicating, and we have a newsletter. We have weekly updates. I put that on our blog on simplyliving.org. We have a website. We have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Meetup. So we're doing all those kinds of things so we're easy to connect with. And I think the last slide. Well, okay, I put this in there because we're having our annual meeting coming up Sunday, the 18th, from 5 to 7. It's a virtual dinner. We normally do it in person, of course, but this year it's different, as everybody knows. We're going to be honoring Green Columbus and the great things that they've done with Earth Day and green drinks. And we're going to be honoring a new award for the Momentum Award for the Sunrise Group, the local Sunrise Hub in Columbus. So let's move out of that, and we'll talk about other things, David.
Well, you certainly covered a lot, Chuck, so I appreciate that. I've taken some notes here too, just like, I guess, some questions. And actually, let me, with the participants, if you have questions, again, feel free to type them in the chat and we'll get to them here. But what was the range, the territory, the jurisdiction that you all operate in? Is it Columbus? Is it Central Ohio? Is it the whole world?
Yeah, it's definitely Central Ohio, but we're partnering. One of the initiatives that we're doing, we're partnering with the Ohio Sustainable Business Council, which is a statewide organization. And we're partnering, we've often partnered with the Ohio Ecological Food and Farm Association, which is statewide. We're partnering with the Green Energy Ohio, which is also statewide. And a lot of these groups have that are statewide are also have members that are businesses. So I've always had a small, and we're now increasing our local database of locally owned businesses, because we know we make the connection between buying local, shopping local. It keeps more money in the local economy, makes more money available for our services that are available through our city of Columbus and through taxes, and it increases wealth. So we have a little phrase that we've often used, which I have a card here. We have a card, maybe you can see it on here, because I am a localist. And we say if just a 10% shift from chain to local keeps $312 million in the Franklin County, enough dollars to create 5,000 new jobs. So that's something people don't realize, that when we shop, we're not anti-chain. There's many chains I love. I like Donato's and half-price books. I'm an addict. So we're not anti-chain. We're just saying that if you shift more to the local, you're actually being a job creator. You're creating more, you're bringing more money into the local economy, and less money is leaking out to Wall Street and to the global economy. which is also a problem because the global economy runs on fossil fuels, creates income inequality. There's a lot of problems with that, so we want to do more localizing. And okay, so that's one of the things
That's great. I mean, I think that touches on something that you mentioned that it kind of popped into my head is that, yeah, there's a lot of inequality going on around there, and keeping things local is a way to try to overcome those inequalities. It's one action that we can take. Also, it seems like Simply Living and GreenSpot have a lot in common with, the individual, and where it might not seem like it's a big step for an individual to be green or take that first step, but when you have thousands of people doing it, it really does add up, or they're making their voices heard. So it's that I can't remember that phrase now, but when people organize, it amplifies their voice. Now, with COVID-19, this past year has obviously been very different than any year that I could remember. How have you all adjusted to that? Did you have to make any adjustments because of COVID-19, or what was that impact, and how did you overcome it?
Yes, we have definitely have to. The operative word needs to be pivot, because we do a lot of events. We do events where we show movies. We have a series called documentary films and local solutions, where we show a film, and then we typically do it at Studio 35 or Gateway or Drexel, and then we have live audiences, and we haven't been able to do that, of course, for over a year now, and that's required us to do more online events. We also do a lot of activities where for example, here comes Earth Day, but it's going to be virtual. Well, normally, we're there exhibiting at the Earth Day with our volunteers, and we're to talk about what we do. ComFest, which I guess is going to be virtual again this year. So we normally have 3 days of volunteers sharing and doing workshops at ComFest. I think we still maybe do a virtual workshop at ComFest. But we're very event focused. One of the easiest ways for people to get in touch with us is through coming to events. We typically collaborate. For example, we have a movie coming up this next week. We are collaborating. Well, no, the next movie is called 2040. It's like a vision of what it's going to be like in 2040 if we do all the things we should do. And so, but we can't do it in person this time. So it's actually April 19 and 20. At April 19, which is the Monday, you can actually come, you can get the free link to watch the program, watch the film, and then we'll have a people who are local people doing the kinds of things that we talk about in the film. That's the local solutions. We have a discussion and dialogue about what we're doing locally to address these issues and make the good things happen by 2040. And then we have a movie we're collaborating on the April 25th, actually 24 and 25, same kind of deal. The movie is called Invisible Hand, and it's a movie about the rights of nature. Can ecosystems like Lake Erie do they have standing in a court? Because if we pollute and kill that ecosystem, don't they have rights? And so that's an international movement, and we're collaborating in that film with the Ohio Community Rights Network and the local, some of you know, the Columbus Community Bill of Rights. So we're working with them to co-sponsor that. We do that typically. We work with other groups to do those events. So that's been a big change. We've had I've had to learn how to use Zoom all the time, and our meetups, and it hurts the income stream because it's been a tough year, and we're kind of going for broke. We've got a new director. Kathy Callan-Becker just started and is part-time director. We have a good core staff. We're expanding our board. So we're trying to kind of reboot and hopefully have more in-person events. Actually, we have a series of nature walks those are actually in person. we're doing one again this on the Sunday the 25th at Riverly, which is a little community, little village in between Worthington and Clintonville, on west of High Street. There's a nature area there where there's going to be a nature walk with Cindy Lanise. It's on, these things are on our website and stuff.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you mentioned a couple of things with Earth Day coming up, and you have Green Columbus being honored here. They have a number of things that folks can sign up for as well, with litter cleanups, planting trees, gardening, all sorts of things. And of course, social distancing is a must, and wearing masks just to keep everybody safe. You touched on it a little bit ago, but basically, you know, when you go green, it's not only good for the environment, it's good for the pocketbook. And it's a way for people to save real money by reducing their impact on the planet, reducing their carbon footprint. I guess if somebody who might be viewing this for the first time knows, you know, all they know is what you've said about simply living, where does one start? Like, what are some actions that you can think of where somebody can live a little bit more simply?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, I touched on the consumer economy, you know, simply buying less, reusing, recycling, repurposing, paying attention to those kinds of issues. And, you know, GreenSpot has all kinds of great examples of that when you join GreenSpot. I mean, everything from, like, you go on the GreenSpot website, we're going to start stealing more of their stuff. Like, for example, how to get rid of plastic in your bathroom. That's, I happened to look at that earlier today. It was a great suggestion. And we put a lot of those kinds of things in our blogs and our weekly updates. But yeah, so simply buying less, you save more money, right? I have solar panels on my house. You know, it's an upfront cost. Not everybody can do that. But on the other hand, you save money over the long run because your solar panels are going to last 20, 25 years and your energy is free from the sun. So there are lots of ways to, that are strategies that actually save you a lot of money. For example, just paying attention to where you live in relation to where you work. Now, a lot of people are working at home these days, which also does reduce transportation and pollution from the air pollution from our cars. But you know, living closer to your home when you do errands, doing several errands at once. So you hit the grocery store and stop by the local hardware store and combine errands so that you do one trip rather than keep doing 3 or 4 trips. So reducing the mileage that you have to do transportation, and of course alternative transit. You know, more bike riding, more healthy bike riding, walking, using CODA. We have one of our members is a CODA coach. She used to do coaching for people to learn how to use CODA, because you know, if you haven't used CODA, it's an issue. How do I get engaged with that? So that's something we do every now and then, which is a handy thing. Again, we're a little different we're an environmental group, yes, but we don't have any single issue. So for example, I just talked about transit and shopping and, you know, eating local, those sorts of localization things. What is the implications for your eating habits and your food? Not just eating local, but where's your food come from? We've had a big issue over the last 40 years of losing our local farms. We want to rebuild it. Now urban farming and local farms are coming back. They're organic farms. We're having more, almost every area in every neighborhood in Central Ohio has a farmer's market where you can get fresh produce. This is a healthy trend that we encourage because it's helping. We like to say, pay attention to what we call your ecological footprint. What is the implication of your choice or your decisions or your lifestyle choices on the environment? So if you're going to eat local, shop at farmers markets, you're helping the food environment. If you pay attention to your home energy, you get an audit, you make sure your apartment is insulated, you turn your thermostats down. All of these choices have an implication for the environment. So that's one of our key themes, is like being mindful about your choices, because they do have give you the opportunity to save money, but we also think it increases the likelihood that you're going to have a more sane, focused, authentic life. You know, you taking care of yourself. And paying attention to what makes you feel better, what's more fun, going to a farmer's market or going into a giant supermarket. I let you decide.
And I was gonna say, you mentioned something about like the energy savings. Even if you can't afford solar panels or a home energy audit or things like that, just turning off lights when you leave a room, just turn the water off when you brush your teeth. The one thing that I know we've seen savings is with the vampire appliances. So these are appliances that they're plugged in, but even when they're turned off, they're still drawing electricity. So, it's like your microwave, it's your computer, it's your cell phone charger that's not hooked up to your cell phone. And just by being mindful of that when it's not in use. I kind of joke, a refrigerator is not a vampire appliance. So that one you want to keep on all the time. But if you start looking around at your outlets and seeing what's plugged in, you might be surprised at how much energy that can be saved by simply unplugging or getting one of those smart power strips, where when you turn there's like 4 outlets on the power strip. The first one kind of controls the other 3. So when that first one, let's say you have your TV plugged in there, when you turn your TV off, it cuts the power to those other outlets on the power strip, so they're not drawing energy. So yeah, there's definitely things that you can do to save money, good for the earth and good for the pocketbook. You've mentioned like transportation too. I know Columbus is working on a couple of different, well, more than a couple of different initiatives, but the Link Up that's looked at the more populated areas and where are we going to be growing in the future, and how can we make sure that the transportation options are going to be sustainable. I know Smart Columbus was working on the first mile, last mile problem, which is if somebody can't get to the bus stop because it's too far away, that's an issue. If they could get to the bus stop at the bus, when they get off the bus, they have to walk a mile or 2 miles or whatever to get to their job. That's going to be a hindrance. So how can we eliminate those obstacles? How can we eliminate that inequality? So I know those are some things that are on the top of people's minds that are being worked on right now. You had mentioned green banking earlier, and you said you're going to get back to that. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. First of all, we say, in addition to eating local and shopping local, investing local, but think about banking local. Okay, so community banks and credit unions, first of all, they typically do more loans to small businesses. They do more. They often manage your loan. They don't sell it necessarily to the these complex derivative schemes that the Wall Street banks do. And then we have started an initiative in a partnership with the Ohio Sustainable Business Council on public banking. So public banks are an option that has been at the state level in the state of North Dakota for 100 years. So they have had a state bank. What that means is simply that the revenues from the state in North Dakota are deposited in a state bank. Now, it doesn't control everything. The state bank is kind of a banker's bank. So it makes low interest loans and typically through credit unions and community banks. North Dakota has more community banks per population than any other state. And so you do your checking and your savings at a community bank, and the banker's bank invests typically in areas that are not as addressed very well by the Wall Street banks. So for example, low interest loans for small businesses, especially during this pandemic, which has been really a tough time for small business owners. So getting a loan at 2% versus 7 or 8% makes a huge difference. So a public bank can do that and still make money. North Dakota Bank has been doing this for 100 years, and their interest rates have actually they make more money than Goldman Sachs. That's the thing they brag about. So it's not like but it's like a bank, but it just makes loans in areas where the private sector banks have not been very successful. So we know affordable housing is an issue, and it's hard for a developer to make money on affordable housing, and especially at the lower income levels, or lower and even lower middle income levels, to get a house. So a lower interest rate could make it possible for the city of Columbus, for example, to do more direct investment in public housing, or low interest loans. I mentioned renewable energy is another area where low interest loans can make a big difference, can encourage more renewable energy, and it can be used for anything where the private sector has been kind of a problem. For example, I like to use this example, having 3 kids with student loans. A lot of students actually move to North Dakota, where they can renegotiate their loan for 1.5% rather than the percentage they're paying, so they can afford to pay it off. Anyway, so yeah, you can use a public bank. They've even used it to bank marijuana companies. Lots of ways.
That's great. I mean, it sounds like it sounds like there's a lot of different options there. One of the questions we had is actually to jump back to the book. I think this is it, the book club.
Yeah.
So I'm going to leave it up here for that person to see. While they're doing that, I know we're running out of time pretty fast here. What are 3 words of wisdom that you have for people who are viewing this? I'll leave that very broad. So.
That's a great question. I think the first word would be mindfulness. I think that that sort of is an umbrella. We're not a faith-based organization. We kind of, people joke that we have kind of, our religion is the ecology and the environment, but on the other hand, just what we're really just being mindful about our choices. So I think that's a key word for us. And then we used to share in our vision statement. The vision statement is we're creating a compassionate and sustainable world through personal, community, and cultural transformation. And so that word compassion is an extension, I think, of the mindfulness. We have several people who are involved in Buddhist Sanghas, and there's a Buddhist Christian church that one of our members formed. And again, around the theme of mindfulness. But compassion is a kind of an extension of if we really are compassionate and reconnecting with nature and ourselves and each other and our community, that extends to, I think, another basic word is love. It's not something, if you moving toward a more authentic relationship with nature and yourself and your community, then love is the appropriate word. It's not typically used in an organizational, it's not actually in our mission statement, but it's really the groundswell, really the corollary of living a compassionate life, and you're less judgmental. And we used to be office mates with the Center for the Central Ohio, the Compassionate, what is it? Compassionate Communications of Central Ohio. And it's based on nonviolent communication. So we're big believers in that. And finally, community. The whole intention is to build a kind of intentional community around people that are living simply and paying attention to their lifestyle choices.
Well, awesome. So mindfulness, compassion, and community. I think those are great words of wisdom that we all could live by. So I do want to thank Chuck for taking the time out of his day. And I want to thank the attendees for watching this. And if you're viewing this at a later date, I appreciate you as well. We do have another GreenSpot conversation coming up. I believe it is April 29th, and it is called Eating Green, which kind of Chuck had alluded to that a little bit earlier, it's going to be at 4 o'clock to 4:45 on the 29th, and we have Bill Dawson with the Franklin Park Conservatory is going to be on, along with some folks with the Center for Biological Diversity, which is out there in California. So we're really excited about that one coming up. You can go to our Facebook page, Columbus GreenSpot, to register, or you can email Columbus. You can email greenspot@columbus.gov to register for that one. And all these are free. And I just want to again reiterate, thank you, Chuck, for being here and doing what you're doing. You're a real inspiration to a lot of us. And I hope everybody enjoys the rest of the day.
Thank you very much, David. Appreciate it.